A little bit about me. My name is Muhannad Zikra. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Stella Stays. We are reinventing the future of living globally. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I've lived in 25 different cities in the world. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I was actually born in Kuwait, just next door. And my relationship with real estate has actually been a bit of a love and hate relationship, right? So having lived in 25 different cities in the world, I've witnessed firsthand what it means to move around from apartment to home to a different city to a different country, right? So after I was born in Kuwait, at a very, very early age, I left. We moved to Iraq. After that, I went to Jordan and then to Syria. And then finally, we settled in Canada, in Montreal, Canada. Has everyone here ever been to Montreal, Canada? Yeah? Oh, there you go. There's one person that's there. So I grew up in Montreal, Canada. I studied as a software engineer. I graduated. As soon as I joined the corporate world, I was back on the road again. So I've traveled to Africa, Asia, Europe, and one of the most important concepts for me was being able to find a place to live in, a place that made sense, a place that had a community, a place that had a sense of belonging. And it was always a challenge. You know, every time you arrive in a new country and you go into a hotel room and you stay there for more than a month, it's not exactly the home experience that you want to have, right? And it always reminded me of the days when I was young and I kept on traveling and trying to find a different place to live. So eventually, once I was done with all the traveling, I got together with some friends. We came back down to the region, and we realized there was an opportunity to actually create something that was meaningful. And before talking about that, one of the things that I do want to mention, especially on the topic of real estate and the future of real estate, especially in the region, is for us to remember the importance of these people, right? So who are these people? These are millennials, these are Gen Zs, and this is a market segment that lives completely differently than what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years. This is a group of people that want instant gratification, they want flexibility, they don't approach life in the same way that I did. I had a specific recipe. You study, you graduate, you buy a home, you get married, and you're done 90% of your life. But this generation is very different. And when we really think about it, specifically about millennials and Gen Z, not only are they very different, but they're actually very important. So they actually represent 46% of the total global population. Now, 46% of the global population, but I'm sure you know that in Saudi Arabia, 65% of the population is actually below the age of 35, right? And when we think about this category, it's important to take a look at how they actually behave in terms of their consumption, right? Because this is one of the most important consumer groups, not only today, but also in the future. So let's think about that, and I'm going to give you some examples that we can take a look at together that's going to actually start to make us think about what kind of impact does this have on the real estate space. So first, let's think about something very simple, right? So this generation loves to order food online. But it's not only food. If we take a look at what Talabat has done in the last year and a half, is they've actually introduced Starbucks as one of the merchants on Talabat. So this literally means that as a person, you can download the Talabat app and you can have your Starbucks coffee delivered to you at home or at your office. So this is the type of instant gratification, despite the fact that there's additional fees, there's delivery fees. The fact that you can pay up to 30 riyals to get your coffee delivered to you is not an issue for this market category. So Talabat is one example. Of course, the other one that we know very well is Netflix, right? So many of you know that back in the days when you wanted to watch a movie, it was a completely different experience. You had to find a place to go watch it, whether it was with family, with friends. It was at a specific time that we had to wait for that channel to be ready. But today, that's completely different, right? On Netflix, these millennials can turn on the app, watch what they want, when they want, and wherever they want. Another example is Amazon, which launched here in the kingdom not too long ago. And obviously, Amazon is about that instant gratification as well. I don't need to go to the delivery store. If I want to order something, I love the fact that Amazon can have it delivered to me same day. And last but not least, of course, is Kareem, right? So I'm going on with these examples, but the idea that I'm trying to show here, which is extremely important for us, is that these are all services that have been completely disrupted based on the fact that this new generation, this modern generation, is looking for something different, right? And Kareem is the same idea. Instead of going out there and hailing a cab, I want to use my app. I want to know when the driver's coming, in what car he's coming, how much it's going to cost, and how long it's going to take me. And we literally see this across the board, right? These are all industries that are not related to real estate, for which we've seen a complete disruption. And by the way, these are all services that are not costly. I mean, the consumer spend on a service like Netflix or Talabat is not something major in terms of the income that an individual makes. So then the big question to ask is, well, what about where we spend most of our time and money, which is our home, right? The concept of finding a place to live, be it in Riyadh, be it in Jeddah, or anywhere else in the world. And if you really think about it, that disruption has not yet arrived, right? And when we talk about real estate, it's important to make the connection between the two. So before we make the connection, one of the things that's important is to actually understand what's the relationship between these millennials and Gen Zs and real estate. You know, once again, when I graduated, one of the main ticks that I had from my parents was the first thing you got to do is find a place to live, purchase a home, and you're set to go. But when we take a look at the statistics today, and this was a survey that was done globally, millennials don't think in the same way, right? Their objective when they graduate is not the same as ours. In fact, they're looking at the world in a completely different way. And one of the recent statistics actually shows that 24.7% of millennials that are currently renting are not planning to purchase a home. They actually want to keep on renting. And if you really think about it, the reason why they want to keep on renting, and especially if you look at it not only here in the region, but also globally, is that buying a home is not as cheap as it used to be before, right? And that's the number one reason that came up for millennials, is that they're just saying, I can't afford to buy a home. And the number two reason, which I think is really important as well, is they want the flexibility of being able to live where they want and when they want. Right? And it's a really important topic, and I've been listening to a lot of the sessions, and I believe there's a huge opportunity around this. But ultimately, it's going to require us to think a little bit differently. Right? In fact, when we really think about it, and we think about all the services that we have access to today, and we can be real to ourselves, and it's important that we be real to ourselves, and we ask ourselves the question, how complicated is it to find and rent a place to live, right? Is it as easy as purchasing something off of Amazon or Talabat or watching content on Netflix? Well, I mean, ultimately you have a tenant that wants to get into a home, right? So they want to try to get into this apartment that a lot of the developers here are actually building. But think about the process. It's not a one-step process, right? When you really think about it, it's actually one of the most traditional, archaic, undigital processes that exist, right? And a lot of you know this very, very well. Come to a new country, you have marketplaces. You got Property Finder, you have Bayut. You go on there, you start searching, you don't know what's real from what's fake, from what is actually still available or not. And then you deal with real estate agents, right? All these real estate agents that are sending you messages and WhatsApp messages and let's go for a visit here and let's go check out this building until you finally find the one that you want with an individual landlord, and then you're still signing a contract, right? I mean, here what's great is you have Ijar, so we've digitized that piece. But at the end of the day, when it comes to payment, what are you doing? You're giving checks, you're doing money transfers, you can't pay by credit card, right? Well, what other service today do you actually pay for using checks or bank transfers? once again, for one of the most important services that we have, which is our home, the place we live. All right, so you pay in checks, and then you gotta set up your utilities, right? And I mean, I've lived in a lot of different cities. It doesn't get easier, right? It's that traditional, typical phone call from your mobile and home internet provider that says, you know, I'm gonna come set it up. I'll be there between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Right? Same thing for your electricity, same thing for your other utilities. And then after that, you actually have to become interior designer, right? You got to figure out the furniture, visit different furniture stores, wait for the delivery to come. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an extremely painful experience. And I can guarantee you that when we look around at the experience that millennials have with renting apartments and villas, the process is extremely, extremely painful. And it's not only for unfurnished apartments, but it's similar experience when you have a furnished apartment. So today there are marketplaces. Got Airbnb out there. You've got some local platforms as well here in Saudi Arabia. But again, one of the big challenges there is it's hard to understand where is that branded experience that I can get from a furnished apartment or from a regular apartment that I know, that I can trust, that I can move into, and that I can have the flexibility with. So this is the big challenge that exists today. And this is the huge opportunity that I've seen when I was growing up, moving across 25 different cities, and that I believe is going to be one of the biggest game changers, not only in terms of giving millennials that ability to find a place to live, but realizing the opportunity that it gives nations when you can allow people to move seamlessly, explore their opportunities, and be able to contribute in the economy without worrying about this flexibility. So the way we do it is actually extremely simple, right? So we use technology that we've built in-house, and we have a portfolio of branded residences, full residential buildings that are furnished, that guests can access in a seamless way. So what that really means is, you first find a Stella Stays home. You browse, you check out the cities that are available, you find an apartment that you like, you select the dates, you pay and confirm by credit card, not by bank transfer, and then you can check in. And the check-in process is very straightforward, right? So once again, technology exists, right? And the whole concept that we had is, how do you simplify this concept? How do you use IoT devices, smart home devices to allow the guest to verify their identity and be able to move in a seamless way? And concepts that we talk about related to that is, we want to give the opportunity for people to show up and immediately start living. And most importantly is, we want to be able to do that within 5 minutes. In the same amount of time that it takes you to order your meal on Talabat or your driver on Uber, we need to get to a point where people can move, whether it's to Riyadh, to Jeddah, or anywhere else within the kingdom, find a place to live, whether it's for 1 month, 2 months, or more, and be able to move in instantly. And that's what we do today at Stella Stays. So essentially, what we've done is we're combining our technology that we've developed, and then we partner with real estate developers. And this is a very unique partnership that we're doing, right? Because we're not doing this on commercial buildings, we're doing this on residential buildings, a space that hasn't been touched before. If anyone's involved in residential real estate development, you know the biggest challenge that you have once you finish your development is, what do I do with my building? And we essentially partner up with these real estate developers, we sign long-term agreements, and we ultimately create the Stella Stays experience. Think of a traditional hotel, except from a Stella Stays perspective, we apply this on residential real estate. Since inception in 2019, we're actually live in 7 countries. So we're in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE, in Turkey, in Bahrain, Manama, in Canada, in London, and we're just about to launch in Egypt as well. And the one thing that we've noticed is that we are not just a hotel alternative. Our apartments are being used by tourists, they're being used by residents, they're being used by new residents, by corporates. 60% of our guest age is below the age of 40. And the average stay that we have, the average length of stay is 28 nights. And when you really think about it, what we've really enabled there is that ability for people to arrive in a country, find a place to live, and not worry about the design, about the utilities, about signing a one-year contract. We're giving them the flexibility of staying for a day, for a week, for a month, or for a year. We have over 2,500 properties between what's live today, what's being signed, and what's in review, which is making us the largest residential hospitality operator in the region. And we've hosted guests for a total of 1 million nights so far. So the validation is there. And the validation not only from a guest perspective that actually enjoys that stay, but also from a developer perspective that's saying, hey, I found a way to repurpose and use my real estate in a much more efficient way. But most importantly, we've been getting feedback as well from municipalities and governments that are saying, hey, you're allowing these corporates to be able to bring in staff, hire new people, hire new residents, bring them into the country, and actually allow them to integrate in a much more efficient, flexible, and faster manner. So we've also hosted a lot of type of guests, which is really important because we're practically one of the biggest landlords in the region, and data is an extremely important aspect of this, right? A lot of our guests that are staying with us, we know why they're coming, we know who they work for. If they opt in for the information, we're actually creating a lot of values, and we're able to understand what type of guest or resident they are. So first of all, we've hosted guests from over 165 nationalities, which is very surprising, but ultimately it shows you that people are more and more willing to move around, to travel, to find a place that makes sense for them. And we're able also to see that we're catering to a different segment that's different than the hotels, right? So we have a lot of group travel, a lot of group corporate travel, a lot of group family travel, and a lot of groups traveling together as family or friends. We also have a lot of business travel, which is also extremely important, and we're actually creating a new category, which is pretty known in the industry now, called the leisure category, right? So it's the business and leisure, which is actually extremely important here in Saudi Arabia, because we don't want our guests to just come in, stay at the hotel, or stay at one of our buildings and do what's necessary from a work perspective, but we actually want to showcase what can be done in the city. What is that experience that you can curate? What is that experience that you can personalize in order to create something that actually has value? And we're doing a lot of that today. So I'm going to give you an idea of what we're calling the future of living, right? So any of you that have ever lived in a building, in a residential building, it's a very typical experience, right? You've got your typical reception, you walk in and it's all residential, and you might have a pool, and you might have a gym. But we've taken it in a different approach, and a lot of the work that we're doing with developers is not only for ready-built residential buildings, but it's also for buildings that are shell and core. And a lot of residential real estate developers don't know what to do with those buildings. And so, we're coming in with our playbook, with our data, and we're showcasing how you can actually create something that's absolutely unique within your asset. And a lot of what we're doing is creating what we're calling a community and tech-driven living concept. And what that really means is we're giving the opportunity within our buildings for people to connect, right? So we're creating spaces where people can meet. We're focusing quite a lot on co-working spaces here in our buildings in Riyadh. We have a co-working space in our building, so we're allowing people to not just live there, but to also connect with like-minded people. The other aspect is we're also introducing areas where they can unwind, they can enjoy. Obviously, living is a core component of the building, but you have other elements that are very important. So more than anything, you're creating a completely different experience. And I think that this is where, from a real estate perspective, when we compare this market to the innovation that we've seen in transportation, consumer goods, entertainment, what is that translation that we have to create from a real estate perspective when we're thinking about the urban planning, when we're thinking about these 12 new cities that we want to create? How do we create an experience that's not going to cater for us necessarily, but that's going to cater for those Gen Zs and for that future traveler and resident? So I'll show you a quick video of what this looks like. This is a project that we're doing in Cairo, in Egypt, with the developer. So that was an example. This is it's a 94-unit building that we're launching in New Cairo. And once again, you see a completely different experience. You have amenity spaces on the top, amenity spaces on the bottom. And this is a big focus for us. And a lot of these buildings that we're launching are actually huge hits. And it's actually a pivotal piece of our strategy that's also here in Saudi Arabia. So we've launched here about 9 months ago. We've got buildings that we've launched in Riyadh. We're looking at additional buildings both here and Jeddah and across the kingdom. And so far, the feedback has been very positive. And once again, it's not just about creating a living experience, but it's also about creating opportunities for people. We have about 60% of our tenants are Saudi nationals, and we have about 40% that are coming in either from the region or internationally. And what we're actually noticing is we're giving them an opportunity to find a place that they can live in comfortably. And that's a lot of the feedback that we've been getting so that they can actually integrate and contribute to the economy in a very direct way. And that is definitely one of the big pieces that we want to focus on at Stella Stays, which is how do we give an opportunity to people to arrive and to contribute to the growth of GDP, to the growth of the economy in a way that's never been done before. And one of the key things to keep in mind is that we have a huge opportunity here. I mean, when we look at the kingdom's vision for 2030 and the priorities that it has when it comes to housing, when it comes to tourism. We heard His Excellency, the Minister of Tourism, talking about reaching 100 million tourists. One of the key things to focus on that is that these tourists are not going to be your traditional visitors. And what's extremely important is for us within the space to focus on working together, on collaborating to create something that's very unique that we can showcase not only in the country, not only in the region, but also globally, that we do have an opportunity here that we can build something that's quite unique, quite different, and that can actually contribute to the country and become a showcase globally. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذ مهند ذكرى. أدعو الدكتور علي الحربي مستشار معالي النائب بوزارة الشؤون البلدية والقروية والإسكان لتكريم الأستاذ مهند ذكرى على مشاركته في المنتدى بهذا العرض.
Thank you very much.